Well, we should probably brief everyone quickly, backlog, what had
Let's just
happened.
redo the whole thing.
Yeah, let's live it up. Let's live it one more time. So basically, you went to get final inspections on a project that was it a spec?
It was
Yes,
like
it was a
yeah.
small spec house.
Yeah, so it was a spec house, so it wasn't a customer or anything like that. And when they came for final inspection, they realized that you never had scheduled or gone through with a rough inspection, like framing.
Correct. All the MEPs were all fine and inspected and passed, but there was never a rough framing inspection,
Um,
which
so
was,
ba-
as
so
we talked about, an oversight
basically,
on our part.
so basically, they said that you were going to have to like rip everything apart, and this was a huge mistake on your behalf, and they require you to like take everything off the walls, open up all the walls. Long story short, you met with the inspector again, and he had a different attitude for whatever reason may have happened in his personal life. Um, and you got away scot free, huh?
Not exactly scot free. We did have to do a little bit of light demo, but in the grand scheme of things, other than a bruised ego and a little bit embarrassed and explaining the whole situation to however many thousand people listen to this show, yeah, scot free. But no, all ended fairly well. Didn't have to move the closing on the house. Like I said, pretty embarrassing. City thought we were a bunch of idiots, but ultimately worked through it and got our patch back together, and all's well that ends well. Lesson
Yeah.
learned.
Nick, you forgot this. Didn't you forget to schedule an inspection, a pretty
Uh,
critical inspection on your property?
yeah, and I forget if I told the story in that episode, but I yeah, on our 45 Wood Oak project, I thought that what the hell was the title of the inspection is like foundation and as built, and I read it as foundation as built. So I had submitted the foundation as built, and he goes, "All right, I'll come out for an inspection tomorrow." And I went back. I was like, "Why would he need to come out for an inspection?" And I'm like, "Oh my god, he needs to inspect the foundation before we backfill it, and to inspect the anchor bolts." And I immediately put my tail between my legs. I'm like, "Hey, I'm going to be super upfront with you that I made a huge mistake here. I thought that was you were just looking for a foundation as built, and the foundation is not only backfilled, but the entire house is framed." And he lost he was like he lost it on me. And he goes, "I don't know even know how we're gonna deal with this situation. I'll see you on site." And he came out and he was just like beside himself. Like, this is insane. Like, how could you I can't see the anchor bolts, I can't see the foundation backfill. And I was like, I know that it says clearly in there, like, no photo or video will be, you know, allowed for inspection. But I quite literally have an entire video of us installing every anchor bolt and backfilling the entire foundation. Like, I mean, motifs there all the time. So we took the video and about 100 photos of the foundation with every anchor bolt. And he, ultimately was like, "Okay, we'll accept it, but please don't let this happen again." And it was the same thing.
Noted.
It's like, yeah, no, I know, but so here, Austin, I'm like, I felt the same way. I'm like, how embarrassing! Like, I'm an idiot, but hey, ended well. All of a sudden, I get a phone call from the city saying, "Hey, we noticed that you installed a water line, um, your project on White Oak." And I was like, "Yeah." They're like, "Yeah, you don't have a permit to do that." I was like, "What?" I was like, I have the building permit," and they're like, "It's a totally separate permit." And I'm going through my notes, and I'm like, every time I've ever done this, it's you go through the water and sewer division in order to get a building permit.
Yeah, how do they issue a building like what do they like
Totally
well?
separate. Totally separate.
So even if it's already stubbed into your lot, you still have to get a permit to bring it from the stub in to the house.
Well, we had yes.
Okay.
But we did need to we did need to tie into the street for both sewer and water. We had to replace them. But regardless, the town runs the water line all the way to the meter. So let me just paint the entire picture. I am fully framed. I have an entire slab in the basement. I am digging the driveway up in efforts to get the water line installed. And let me just.
Sorry, I'm picking up a gnarly layer. That's better.
That's okay. And the town calls and says I don't have a permit. So I go back and I'm like, hey, we already had this approved. Like, this was reviewed by you guys. Here's the proposed sewer and water layout. They come back, they're like, we actually don't approve that. I know we reviewed it, but we want it to be changed. And oh, by the way, you have a 1-inch line noted on the drawing, and it's required to be 2 inches. And I'm like, holy shit! Like, this is a pretty big issue because I have a 1-inch water line that is coiled up into the middle of my concrete slab in the basement that is trenched underneath the concrete slab that got placed the week prior and out into the driveway and coiled
and
up to
copper, not
copper.
What are you doing with a 2-inch water line going into a house?
It's I guess the entire town is super low pressure, so the 1 inch isn't enough. So you have to put 2-inch and a booster pump.
Jeez.
So not only do I have the water in the wrong spot and the sewer going out at the wrong elevation in the wrong spot, but we that's one issue. I don't have a permit, so then I'm figuring the permit out. But on top of all this, the 1-inch water line I have they won't approve. So all this talk about, all right, we'll cut the slab, we'll pull the water line out, we'll install a new one, we'll patch the slab, we'll paint, we'll do epoxy on the concrete floor. You'll never know it. The slab was patched. And I'm just refusing that that's going to be how we go about this. Like, we cannot cut this slab. Like, I can't do this. Like, there has to be a better way. I'll just abandon that water line. I'll bring the water line in somewhere else. And I spent hours like researching this. I'm like, wait a second. And I called my buddy that does directional drilling. I'm like, is it insane to think that I could directional drill like a water line? He goes, no, but why don't you just use the old water line and pull the new one? I'm like, okay, I like where your head's at. I'm like, let me see how I go about that. So I forget what the terminology is, but I found all these YouTube videos of guys literally connecting new water lines on old ones and sitting in the driveway with an excavator and pulling the new one through. And my site guy's like, no way, like it's 2-inch, like how, like it's, it bends through underneath the slab. Like there's no way we're going to pull that. And I'm like, well, we're going to try because I'm not cutting the slab.
So you're saying there's a chance.
And so we end up removing the whole staircase because the water line was under the staircase, and they hung the coil of 2-inch copper in the second floor and basically fed it straight down. And I forget how they clamped it. I forget how they connected it to the 1-inch line, but I wasn't on site. But apparently it pulled super smooth. It was all sand where it was laid in anyway. So it pulled super smooth, and it was coming out of the foundation wall. And it was about 6 inches out of the foundation wall, and the thing slipped off, and like it just stopped. And
hey, that's far enough, man. You're out.
I know. And I was like, we're out. We can connect. And long story short, the town came out. They were fine. Everything was good. But all in all, the work's done. It was a huge miss on my part, and all of that happened within a matter of like 10 days of each other from me missing the first inspection. So I woke up in actually a cold sweat the other morning at like 4:30 in the morning. And I was like, holy shit, I didn't get my air barrier inspection, like the WRB inspection. Like I literally jumped and I pull out my phone and I email the inspector like at 5 a.m. on a Sunday. I'm like, hey, just looking to schedule my WRB inspection. And I hit send, and I realized that we had already talked, and it's not required because we're doing a blower door. So at like 5:08 a.m. I wrote, hey, my mistake. I forgot that we talked about this, and you don't require it because we'll do a blower door. Have a great day. I'm like, this
guy for sure thinks you're a psycho now.
That guy's like, this kid is a moron. Like,